Hello everyone, welcome to my first lesson on how to approach a new word in your reading. This lesson will contain a lot of examples in it and it takes up a lot of time, so if you want to skip past that, feel free. Hello, my name is Mr. Rosenthal and I'm going to briefly explain to you how to approach a new word in your reading. The process is very simple, just 3 steps basically. 1, try and figure it out. 2, whatever you can figure out, look it up. And then 3, to make sure that you know it, you need to be able to use it. I'm going to give you a couple details about each of these. Okay, so the first step in the 3-step process for approaching a new word is figure it out. By figure it out, I mean try and get the word's meaning and its part of speech possibly, just by looking at it and without having to look it up. If you have to look it up, it takes a lot of time and we want to do things as quickly as possible. So this step is really important for speed and efficiency for your reading. Really, there's 2 basic parts to this. If you're trying to figure out a word, you can basically break the word down into its parts to try and understand it better. It's word analysis. Or you can look at the words around that word, look at its context to try and figure out its meaning and or part of speech. Let's take a closer look at word analysis first. By word analysis, I mean look at its root word. Does that root word look familiar to you? Do you know, if so, what do those words mean? Maybe you can try and figure out this word, this root word, based upon other words that you've seen that you know. Affixes are the letters that we add to the beginning and ends of words, and it changes meaning in one or more ways. Prefixes are those letters that are added to the beginning of words. Suffixes are those letters that are added to the ends of words to change that meaning. If you look at the root word and the affixes, you can often figure out the meaning of the word and its part of speech. that case, what you'll try and do, and you'll probably do this anyway, this is a natural thing to do as a reader, is to look at the other words around the word that you're trying to figure out. If you look at those words and you look at the sentences before and after, you can often figure it out or get very close to the meaning of the word. Okay, so we're going to go over an example of using context to try and figure out a word's meaning and part of speech. I'm using here an example from the screenplay of one of my favorite movies, A Few Good Men. I mostly want you to just see the way I'm thinking as I'm reading through this, particularly as it gets close to the target word. In this case, the target word will be fathom. Okay. So here we go. You want answers? I think I'm entitled to. You want answers? I want the truth. Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's going to do it? You, Lieutenant Weinberg? I have a greater responsibility than you could possibly fathom. Now, when my mind comes across this word, fathom, and I've never seen that word before, so I immediately start thinking word analysis, as I talked about before. Is there a root word that I know here? A base word? Fathom? No. Nothing about this word seems familiar to me at all. I can't even tell it's part of speech. I don't see any suffixes here. No letters on the end of it. No letters on the beginning of it. I can try and look at the sentence. I have a greater responsibility than you could possibly fathom. Maybe I substitute another word in here to try and figure out it's part of speech. Than you could possibly understand. I have a greater responsibility than you could possibly imagine. So imagine, understand, used in this way, that would be a verb. So this is a verb. That's all I can really get, and I'm guessing that it means something having to do with understand, think of, imagine, something like that. So I'm going to go back and read up to it, and then I'm going to read a little bit after it. Again, this is the context, so let's try again, read back up a little bit. Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's going to do it? You, Lieutenant Weinberg? I have a greater responsibility than you could possibly fathom. You weep for Santiago and you curse the Marines. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what I know. See, he's talking about not knowing. So maybe fathom has to do with knowing. Like I thought it was understand. It looks like that is what it means. That Santiago's death, while tragic, probably saved lives. And my existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible, incomprehensible is another word that maybe you don't know when you come across it. And we could go ahead and break this word down. For example, look at the base word, or the word, part of the word that I know, comprehend. Comprehend. Maybe you know that comprehend means understand. Oh, okay, well, if it means understand, well, ible, we just went over ible. The suffix ible makes the word an adjective, a descriptive word. Okay, it also means able to. So able to understand, except for we also have in. Remember, that means not. That's a prefix that means not. So not understandable. That would be an example of using word analysis to try and figure this word out. And it goes along with the word fathom. Again, this is using context. So we have the knowing, know, incomprehensible, not understandable. So fathom, it seems to me, means something, means understand. A synonym would be understand, comprehend. So going through this process is using context to try and figure out a word's meaning. That is the thought process that you should go through, something similar to that. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next step. What happens if you can't figure it out on your own, or you don't fully understand it? What do you do? Okay, so the second step in the three-step process for approaching a new word is to look it up, to do some research. If you've gotten to this step, you've already gone through step one, which is to try and figure it out before spending the time to look it up. That's oftentimes will work just fine. You'll be able to figure out a word's meaning and move on with your reading by just doing the word analysis, breaking it up into its parts, or looking at the word in context, the other words around it. But if you have to look it up, there are 4 things that I want you to do to understand that word at a deeper level. One, obviously, is to get the definition of the word. And you need to get the right definition of the word because many words have many different definitions, or at least more than one definition. So you need to match up the correct definition with the way the word's being used in the sentence that you saw it. After you do that, another warning is that, and you've probably experienced this yourself when you've gone to look words up in the past, is the definition itself will require you to do more research. It's annoying when that happens, but sometimes it's absolutely necessary because the definition is so hard to understand. After you get the correct definition, you want to make sure you know the part of speech, which is its function in language. Is this a noun? Is this a verb? Is this an adjective? And so on. You need to know how it functions so that you can use it, so that you can understand how it's being used when you read it. Synonyms are really important. If you look in a thesaurus, it'll give you words that mean the same as or something similar to the target word, the word that you're trying to understand. Why is that so important? Well, if you can use any one of those words, then you can basically substitute the new word and you'll be able to use that word. Or when you see it in your reading, you can substitute the synonym and get a basic understanding of the meaning. Extremely helpful. I would even say that if you just looked up the synonyms, you will often get 80 to 90% of an understanding of the word. Anyway, the last part would be to get the original meaning. So the word origins, what language did this come from? But that's not as important as looking at the actual original meaning. If you look in a dictionary, it'll often include the original meaning of the word in whatever language it came from. And understanding how it started or the original meaning will often lead you to its current meaning and give you more insight into why the current meaning is what it is. And so after you've found these 4 pieces of information, you will have a much deeper understanding of the word and you will be ready for step 3, which is to use the word in a sentence of your own. So the third step in the 3-step process for approaching a new word in your reading is to use it. By this point, we have tried to figure the word out using word analysis, breaking it down into its parts, and looking at its context, the other words around it. We have looked up the word. We've done research, meaning we've looked up its definition. We've looked up its part of speech. We've looked up its synonyms. And we've looked up its original meaning and where it came from. If you've done all of that, then by this point, you understand that word at a much deeper level. But to understand it at its deepest level, I would argue that you need to use it. And so here we are at the last step. The first level of using it would be to look at how it's used, where you found it, and try and use it in a similar sentence. The next level up would be to try and use it in a different sentence, maybe the same part of speech, but in an entirely different sentence. A good way to cheat or a trick would be to use one of the synonyms that you found. If you can use one of those synonyms in a sentence comfortably, then all you really have to do is substitute the new word. If you can do that, then you have a possibly better understanding of the word. The best is to be able to write a completely different sentence where the word is used exactly correctly, given its definition and part of speech. Not only that, but if you wanted to challenge yourself more, try and use the word in a different form, so a different part of speech. So if it was a verb, try and turn it into a noun. If it was an adjective, try and turn it into an adverb. Once you've done this, then you understand that word at a much deeper level, and you are ready to move on with your reading. Thank you very much.